Hello and welcome to this edition of Full Circle, sponsored by South Central Louisiana Human Services Authority. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside. Thanks so much for joining us, and very glad to have with us two of the people who are making a difference in our community in lots of different ways. First, we welcome Dr. James Hyatt. Dr. Hyatt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks
we appreciate
for having
it.
us.
All right, very good. Sitting next to him, Leilani Brunette. Thanks for joining us, Leilani.
Thanks for having us again.
All right, we appreciate that. One of the things that I think is so very important is that our community, much like many across the country, are dealing with this fentanyl issue. Doc, could you tell us just a little bit about what fentanyl is as a substance?
Yeah, so fentanyl, it is part of the opioid family of drugs. It's synthetic, it is man-made. Originally designed for uses in chronic pain or instances where patients needed a drug for pain, like in cancer pain. But as of recently, it's become more of a drug of use for patients who are struggling with opioid use disorder.
Okay. And again, for people like you, not only are you in family medicine, but you are also specialized as medication for opioid use disorders, right? Tell us a little bit about that designation.
Right. So FDA has approved several medications that can be utilized for individuals that struggle with opioid use disorder. These medications are very effective, and we do use them in our clinics to help patients overcome the addiction to the opioids. One of the main medications we use right now is buprenorphine. It's been very effective. We also use medications like naltrexone. So there are options out there for patients.
To be able to have that. So let's talk a little bit about how fentanyl is abused. So can we talk about the abuse of that? I know fentanyl is there. It's a very high-powered opioid. It's synthetic. But how do people abuse it?
Yeah, so basically what happens is that because it comes from the family of opioid-type drugs, it does act on the reward center of the brain to produce a sort of a reward response. And this response, chemical response, is what creates the kind of repetitive use of the drug. So once that response is kind of learned by the brain and initiated, it becomes very, very hard to stop that response on your own. And that's where the kind of the abuse and the addiction part comes into play.
Okay. And Leilani, we're seeing quite a few people who are struggling with this, right? Y'all are dealing with that in the clinics pretty often.
We are, although I'm not in the clinic
Right.
directly, I'm in community. I actually work with 7 parishes. We are providing all law enforcement officers, firefighters, first responders with the life-saving drug Narcan. And for whatever reason, I can't give the answer to this, but I am getting calls from them requesting additional Narcan. It seems like here recently there's been an issue with resuscitating individuals, which maybe a kit or even one portion of a kit is now taking a couple of kits. And they're asking me, why do you think that's happening? And I would rather not speculate because I don't know, but I know that I'm getting more and more calls that they're seeing that it's more and more difficult to resuscitate these individuals. But I'm out in community with our high-risk populations and with those agencies that service our high-risk populations and making sure they have that life-saving drug.
Well, I've been so fortunate to be a part of watching and seeing how we're trying to educate, especially our first responders. And so being involved as a social worker in our community, much like you are, Leilani, seeing what we need to do in the community, I think one of it is kind of helping people understand what happens to the body and what the effect on the body fentanyl is.
Sure. Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so what happens is as a person takes fentanyl or any other opioid in excess of what their body can handle, one of the first things that's going to happen to the body is going to begin to shut down. And one of the first things that shuts down is the respiratory drive, so the ability to breathe. And then this lack of oxygen is kind of what leads to death. And the hope is that you can recognize it soon enough. Somebody in the near the vicinity can see what's happening, and hopefully administer either Narcan, what we also term naloxone.
Right.
It comes in various forms, either nasally or intramuscular shots. But that has been the drug that can help reverse the effects of the overdose. To add to what Leilani was talking about is that I think what's leading to a lot of these cases where they're having to use increased doses of naloxone or Narcan to revive these patients is probably related to the potency. So the drugs are becoming more potent. Heroin, they're increasing the potency of it. Also, they're starting to use what we call analogs of fentanyl. So it would kind of be like a cousin of fentanyl. So carfentanil is an analog of fentanyl. It's much more potent. And so those cases are going to require more Narcan to revive the patient.
And these things happen very quickly. Once someone begins an overdose, they can stop breathing very, very quickly, right? So this is the timeline is so very important. The temporal dimension when it comes for helping someone is very, very vital.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're talking within minutes, So it's, the hope is that we can get, Narcan into the homes of every patient that suffers from an opiate use disorder, and that their family and friends can be trained on how to utilize it in the event of an overdose. And every minute counts, every second counts. So CPR, 911, anything that can be initiated, right away is important.
Yeah, fentanyl kind of comes in different dosages, comes in different forms. Dr. Hyatt, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the FDA has approved several formulations of fentanyl to be used in medical practice. It does come in a pill form that patients can take for things like chronic pain. It also will come in a patch form that they can wear transdermal, as well as IV form that can be utilized during surgeries. Now, the more of the illicit forms of fentanyl that we're seeing that are coming across the border, that's going to be more in a powder form, and that's going to be mixed with other type of pills, and we're starting to see it a lot mixed with pills that are, people would think they're taking a Percocet or taking a Xanax, and it's actually mixed with fentanyl.
Fentanyl. And it may be shocking, but you can see on the screen here, one of the things that was amazing to me, and Leilani, it's kind of scary, that very small dose, less than the edge of a pencil, is the lethal dose of fentanyl.
Correct.
That's why this is so scary.
It is very scary. That what you just saw there, yes, it is a lethal dose. If there's any bit of good news that I want to share that I've recently shared with my first responders, the CDC initially put out a statement saying that if you accidentally leaned on it and didn't know that it would just be absorbed through the skin, we now know that's not necessarily the case. The molecular structure is too big to pass through all the layers of the skin.
Oh, good.
What's happening maybe is when someone sees powder and they maybe panic and kind of try to dust it away, it becomes an inhalation problem, and then they can overdose that way. I'm still going to err on the side of caution. I'll be masked and gloved and whatever I have to do, but there is a bit of good news, and it's that because you saw the lethal dose, and we would be frightened to think that we could possibly touch that and overdose. But we also have an issue, and I think we brought a picture of it, of the pills. So when the average person looking at these pills, that looks like well, maybe not the colorful ones, but the blue ones look legitimate, right?
Right.
These are fake. These are pressed fentanyl pills. And so in 2021, the staggering numbers was that 4 out of 10 of these that would be confiscated or seized, 4 out of 10 of those were all lethal doses. 2022, sadly, that number has now gone up. For everything they're seizing, about 6 out of 10 now are lethal doses.
So where we saw at one time 40%.
Correct.
Now we're
and
seeing
within a year,
60%.
jumped to 60. And you saw the rainbow color ones. Those are scary as well. Those appeal to young people. I can explain the what's and the hows. What we can't explain is the why. Why would those who are putting these out there be putting these out there? Is it because it's easier to go undetected because of the color, or is it because they're trying to appeal to a younger population? It's frightening either way. Lethal doses right there. And I want to let you know that they did confiscate rainbow fentanyl in New Orleans. I want to say, let me think, it was in October of 22. They confiscated rainbow fentanyl in the New Orleans area.
Well, and we're talking just 5 months ago, and that's within 60 miles of where we
in
are.
our backyard.
Some of those, that's even smaller for some people. Certainly for all of the different far-reaching areas at South Central Services, we know all of the different places that you guys are and are kind of seeing these things. But talking about how we need to be careful, I know I see people in late-stage illnesses through home health and hospice, and fentanyl patches are pretty common for those people with advanced illnesses. And family members must always wear gloves when removing or putting on a fentanyl patch. And there are ways to be able to do this safely, but when it's in this powder form, like we showed on the edge of the pencil, that can be awfully scary.
And what the powder form does not have is the substrate. That's why it won't be absorbed into our tissue, because they say, well, fentanyl can be absorbed. Think about the patches. The patches have a substrate. Pharmaceutical companies, but that helps to get that in there, unlike the powder. But you want to use extreme caution even when using that pharmaceutical grade patch, and glove up and be very, very careful. And when having to dispose of them, you want to make sure that it can't get into the wrong hands as well.
Right. Now, it's very important for people to know that Narcan's available.
Yes.
Leilani, let's talk about how somebody can just go and get Narcan as needed for themselves or others.
Fortunately, since 2017, we've had a standing order in the state of Louisiana, and now in all 50 states, there's a standing order for Narcan. So if someone feels they need Narcan for themselves or for a loved one, they can go into a pharmacy and request nasal Narcan, no questions asked. Some insurance companies may cover a portion of it. Each individual would have to speak with their own insurance company, but it is readily available and is very, very easy to get just for the asking.
And so I think it's very important to be able to have that available. And for people that, you know, I've got one of my best friends, his daughter has some issues with substance use, and she's got a lot of friends. She's seen several friends die from fentanyl overdoses. He's encouraged them, go and get Narcan, have some nasal Narcan available, and it's important to be able to do that. And so they can go and get that as well.
Yes.
People who know that they have issues or family or friends that have that as well. And so kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the measures that people can take to decrease this addiction or overdose. Can we just kind of share some of those ideas on how to do that?
Right. So you want to know what you're taking. Make sure you know all of your medications. Make sure you're not mixing this with alcohol or any other medication, because synergism is very possible, which is basically you put the two together and 1 + 1 does not equal 2.
Right.
With these types of things. You want to know your tolerance or your loss of tolerance level. Do you find yourself needing more and more? And if you've been off for a little while, you can't take as much as you used to. And if you do, that could be deadly. And never use medications other than the way they've been directed for you.
Right. And so, again, Doc, you see these things often. Thank you very, very much for sharing your knowledge and information for both of you. It's very much appreciated. And we're going to put up a slide here as we close the show. For people that need more information, they can go to this. So pay attention to this. Dr. Hyatt, thank you so much. Leilani, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us. As we close here full circle, you'll see the resources available through South Central.